We sometimes ask, if there is a loving God, why does he stand back and do nothing while the world is full of suffering?
If we were to expect a loving God to prevent all suffering, this would include that caused by pollution. This would affect most goods and services in industrialized countries. A World Health Organization fact sheet points out that air pollution is a major cause of suffering. This is what it says. Air pollution is a major environmental risk to health and is estimated to cause approximately 2 million premature deaths worldwide per year. So every time we go in a car or aeroplane, we are contributing to someone suffering. If a loving God were to take action to prevent suffering, he would have to stop all forms of modern transport. Many of us would not like this kind of interference in our lives one little bit.
Suffering can be a warning that interrupts our normal routines. It can make us remember that our lives will end one day. The good news is that death need not be the end. So we suggest that our loving Creator has given us freedom of choice. He's chosen suffering as a way to get our attention and make us think about his offer of life after death. We can choose whether or not we want to take notice. Sometimes we can't immediately see a reason for God's discipline. The reason might not be clear for many years, but with hindsight we can see the benefit we've gained because of the pain we've had to endure. Perhaps you can think back to the time when you were a child and how your parents told you off for doing something and you thought they were being unfair or simply plain wrong. There are times when loving parents need to show their children that they're in danger. They want to get the child's attention before disaster happens. They tell the child to stop before harm is done. If the comment is ignored, they may try to restrain the child physically. The motives are good, but the child may see it very differently at the time. The child may see it as undesirable, interrupting what it wants to do. Suffering in our lives can be like this. It can upset our routines and make us stop and realise that we are heading for a disaster far worse than getting burnt. We are all going to the grave, and a loving Creator has given us the choice of doing something about that. Like our parents, our Creator wants us to love and respect him out of choice. He wants us to choose to think about his offer of life after death. So let's remind ourselves of what we've seen. We have in fact seen that firstly, suffering can make us stop and think. Secondly, suffering sometimes warns us that things are not right. We then saw that it may make us stop and consider risks we are taking. Suffering makes us think about the effect of our actions on other people. It can disturb our routines and can make us realise that our lives are not endless and that there is something wrong with our world. Suffering can make us stop and think about our loving Creator's offer of life after death, which we can choose to accept or reject. The Bible tells us that suffering is part of the consequences of our tendency to want our own way. It also tells us that suffering will end when Jesus returns to remove the imperfections in our world.
You can learn more about this topic by going back to the Life's Big Questions website, or you can choose another topic to look at. Click on one of these.